Her name is synonymous with bringing Indian literature on the global scene. But 20 years later, 2 decades later, Arundhati Roy has not stopped making her mark. Her latest book is now an international bestseller, both in UK as well as fast rising on the charts here, part of the New York Times must-read 10 list. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to have you on NDTV, and just minutes before this very important book launch and signing that you're going to do here at the Brooklyn Academy of Music. But Arundhati, first just tell me, 20 years in the making. You have not been silent because you've written extensively about activism in that interim. But what was necessary to sort of bring all these forces into this culmination, the Ministry of Utmost Happiness, now in 2017?
Oh, well, it isn't, there isn't any, in fiction, there isn't any real sort of practical goal or anything like that, So it's just, I suppose things get built, layered in me in all these years of living and working and writing, and fiction visited me again. It isn't something, I've always said that I wasn't just going to write a book because I had written a successful book, or I never felt it was my duty to keep writing. So I'd write only when I had a book to write, and the characters in the book just showed up at my place and wouldn't go away.
I want to talk about these characters in the book, and precisely about two main ones. Anjum, who's a transgender or doesn't like to be described in the modern term, says is and owns being a hijra, as well as Tilotama, who's this very strong person who is almost boundaryless, casteless in many respects, has a voice of her own. And then it intersperses that with a lot of issues. From what we are witnessing in terms of the nationalism sort of movement, to Kashmir separatism, to Gujarat riots, to even politicians and political movements of what happened, as you described Manmohan Singh as being sort of the rabbit, the puppet who was controlled, and then you describe Anna Hazare as well. So various people have taken up a form. How important is the politics, and how important are these people who are living on those boundaries of those politics?
I don't, even when I was writing, non-fiction essays, I don't look at things as issues. I know that that's how people look at it, but I don't, I just look at it as a way of deepening, a way of looking at the world. And these are things that are in the air we breathe. It's not that you bring in these issues under sort of some kind of heading, or for the evening news. It's the air we breathe, isn't it? In India, what's happening in Kashmir, what's happening with caste, what's going on politically. It's not a current affairs book, but it is about the air we breathe and the things that move people and the things that affect people. So in order to actually write a quiet little book about an intimate life, you'd have to actually ignore these things that are impeding on us every day, And I was, to me, the idea, I think, I felt that novels are getting domesticated, that you have to have some subject heading, and actually how do you write a book about the air? How do you write a book that isn't just about a few characters in the background, a political curtain, but how do you break out of that? It was an experiment.
Even when you talk about these people who live in the shadows, their very essence seems to be one of optimism, of being warriors, of fighting or leading the best lives that they do lead. But you talk about very difficult subjects, and one of them in which you make references also is some kind of notion of being a Hindu version of Pakistan. You have given both opinions their platform, because you've spoken from people who have felt marginalized on both sides of the platform. But these are messy and monumental issues. if there is a message that you want to give out, and you've always said that you write with a message, you write to be vocal, to vocalize and to be heard, not to sort of subdue opinion, what would you like to leave in essence?
Oh, I mean, I write the essays because I always feel the need to intervene sometimes when a situation is closing down, but certainly never when I write fiction do I have some very simple message. You know, I wouldn't take 10 years to write a book if I could tell you in 3 minutes what the message was. And actually, in you know, and also, I mean, you refer to real people. The thing is, fiction always is rooted in and nourished in reality, but you know, they are not real people in that sense of the word. But if you look at a situation, for example, a large part of the book is set in Kashmir, and I've been traveling there a lot, and I know that you can't just tell the story of Kashmir in any real way, just in reportage or human rights reports, or how many people were killed, or how many people were tortured, or how many militants killed whom. You know, you can't do that, because ultimately you're talking about a society that has been administered by a military, more or less, for years and years. What does it do to normal life there? And you look at it from different points of view. That's what a novel does, you know. So it isn't simple. It isn't a news item. It isn't a news report. It's something more. And it's not just about, you know, it's not news. It's not also, I think it's, why are there 2,000 people gathered here? Because it's talking about everybody, about the world, you know, not about just current affairs.
And that's interesting, because in many ways, though this is obviously a huge sort of almost an insight into the modern India we live in, which is messy and monumental, like you said, and there are no clear answers. It's also a reflection of how we are vis-a-vis the rest of the world, and the world seems to be having its own turmoil and mess as well. Do you feel that everyone relates to that we are essentially living in a world which is being changed by these political movements, by agendas, by people's own desires to use platforms selfishly, but in the end you leave with some kind of positive message?
I think people are here for literature, which is a profound thing, you know. So we can't keep making it about issues and current affairs and so on. Literature is a monumental thing and a beautiful thing and a complicated thing. And if it weren't, somebody sitting and writing in India would not be reading to 2,000 people in the Brooklyn Academy of Music.